In this video, I'm going to be challenging myself to build a clone base every single day for the next 3 days. This is the first time I've really done a mock building challenge like this on my YouTube channel, so I'm really excited to practice my mock building skills, and I'm really excited to see how all of these mocks turn out in the end. All 3 of these bases will be based on different planets from the Star Wars universe, which will provide completely different looking mocks, and I'll be able to use different building techniques and different color palettes for each base. So with all that said, let's get right into the challenge. For the first clone base, we are traveling to one of my favorite planets in the entire Star Wars universe, Geonosis. It's got some fun colors to work with and some very cool architecture. And just to be clear, this mock is based during the first battle of Geonosis. For this clone base, I wanted to try something I have never done with any mock I have ever built, which is just make a completely snot base. I've seen a couple of other YouTubers and mock builders online use this technique, and I've always wanted to try it, and so I gave it a try and I really like it. It's a pretty fun and simple technique. I'll definitely be using this snot base technique more, and you guys can see that I use some slow bricks just to give the base a little bit more interesting of a shape. All that needs to happen now is just to continue plating and tiling everything off and just working on that terrain. As you can see, I also started placing some wedge plates just towards the back of the mock to add a little bit of a raised section to the terrain just to make it look more interesting. There's just something so satisfying about the dark orange color. Not really sure why, but dark orange and medium nougat just go so well together. And here's the finished base of the mock. I'm pretty proud of what I was able to do. Now we're going to add some of the spires in. This is usually the spire design that most mock builders use when building Geonosis, just using these snot bricks and a bunch of wedge bricks as well. So I'm going to add all 3 of these spires in, and it definitely makes it look like Geonosis. I'm also going to add in this nice hollow table right here, and this custom heavy blaster cannon right next to this spire, and this super cool Republic tent that I got from Cape Cantina. Also put a couple of containers with thermal detonators, and 3 of these classic Phase 1 clone troopers with these ponchos that I also got from Cape Cantina. I've also got this really cool custom classic Phase 1 clone trooper as well, and 2 commandos, this one being a weathered commando, both of them being from Clone Army Customs. And here is the final result of my Geonosis clone base. Now that I'm really looking at it, maybe it's not a complete clone base as you would imagine, but it's more of like a campsite or just some kind of little outpost or staging ground while they gather their resources and maybe plan a counterattack or something. I'm really happy with the final result of this mock. It definitely makes me want to build more Geonosis, but with that said, let's get into day 2. For day 2, I wanted to build a biome I have never really built in LEGO before, and that is the swamplands. And no, I'm not talking about these swamplands, more specifically the Naboo swamplands. We see this featured in The Phantom Menace and a little bit in the Clone Wars, and I wanted to build a command center. For this command center, I wanted to be portable and more of a mobile one, and this idea definitely comes from Coconut Brick Studios, who built one a little while back. I was really inspired by what he built. I thought it was a really cool idea, so I wanted to try it out myself. Unfortunately, I wish I had more of the corner and rounded bricks, but I kind of had to improvise with some snot, and I think it turned out alright. Also, those spring-loaded shooter bricks, whatever you want to call them, look great for the doorway. Main color scheme I use for this is just dark bluish gray, light bluish gray, and some stripes of maroon that are pretty typical for clone bases. Truthfully, I've really never built a clone base like this, so I used a good bit of snot just for the detailing, and I think it turned out alright. Here's what one of the sides of the clone base looked like, and I basically just mirrored this on the other side. And now that I'm looking at the time lapse, I really wish I included an interior, at least a little bit, maybe some computers or a weapon rack, but you don't really see it anyway, so it's not that big of a deal. The roof is going to be pretty simple, just some dark bluish gray plates. Maybe I could have done a snot technique for a smoother looking roof, but it turned out alright. I also had the idea to add this dish piece in with a Republic logo on top of it. And here is what the mobile command center looks like. But we're not done yet, it's time to bust out the bucket of Technic parts. Here is what the front 2 legs of the base look like. I would have gone all 4 with this Technic bar right here, but unfortunately I could only find 2 in my collection. So I came up with a pretty simple design for the feet, and here is the finished result. Pretty simple design, nothing crazy, and of course a little ramp so the clone troopers can enter and exit the base. Main colors I'm going to be using for the swamp is olive green, dark green, and some transparent blue pieces for the water. Before I actually start building the swamp or any of the terrain, I'm just going to build this border, just using some black tiles. The main color for it will be this dark green, which will look great for the swamp. Fortunately, I don't have a lot of tile for the ground, which I like to do like a nice ratio of plates and tile, but I only have dark green plates, so I'll definitely have to buy some dark green tile later on. I also laid out some black plate just so I know where all of the water is going to go and give it that nice little murky swamp feel. And then I surrounded the pond or the lake, whatever you want to call it, with some brown plate as well. I really like how this is looking so far. The dark green and the nice pop of blue looks great. The dark green and olive green have a really nice contrast. I like how those colors are looking, so I'm just going to add a couple patches of some olive green wedge plates. Originally, I wanted to include 2 trees that looked like this, but I really only had room for 1. I think I was able to come up with a pretty decent looking tree for a swamp. I wish I had more vine and branch pieces to really add more detail to it, but I think it turned out pretty good. And finally, I'm just going to add more shrubbery and plants to the mock. And what better squad for the swamp than the 41st Elite Corps? I've got this one on an ATRT, and it probably would have been nice to add a swamp speeder, but again, I don't really have a lot of room to work with, so we're just going to add a whole bunch of these scout troopers. And here's the final result of my mobile clone base in the Naboo swamp. This has got to be one of the most unique looking mocks I have ever built, mainly because of the colors I was able to use, but also I've never really built a mobile clone base like this. Pretty happy with how the base turned out. I'll definitely have to try building another one of these once I get some better looking pieces. But for the meantime, I think I did a pretty good job. 41st Elite Scout Troopers, I love how they look in this mock, and they definitely bring it alive. But now that this mock is done, it is time to move on to day 3 and the final mock. For the final mock, I thought it'd be pretty fitting to build this base on one of the most heavily featured planets in the Clone Wars, Ryloth. It's definitely not one of the most colorful or unique planets in the Star Wars universe, but I really like it anyway. Original plans for this mock was to include a fighter tank, but that didn't really work out in the end, so you guys will have to keep watching to find out why. Just like the previous mock, I wanted to build the black border around it, so that's exactly what I did. Instead of just using tile for this border, I also went with a layer of black brick, just so I can add some more depth to the mock, as you'll see later. After finishing up putting all this filler brick on the mock, it is time to plate it off. The bottom of the mock, you guys can see a spot where I just didn't put any filler brick at all. It's because I wanted to add a little bit of a ditch or a ground in the terrain just to give it more detail, and I thought it would be just a nice little thing to add to the mock, just so the entire terrain isn't just completely flat. Dark tan and olive green really complement each other really nicely, and building all this really makes me want to build some kind of large-scale Ryloth mock, which I might just do in the future, so you guys will definitely want to stay tuned for that. Also, I gotta say, I love those olive green plants as well. It's time to take a little break on the terrain for a second and focus on the base. So this is the design I came up for the base floor. So I'm just gonna add some more light bluish gray bricks to the side of it and finish up that base floor. The fighter tank fits pretty nice on it, so now it's time to build the sides and the top of the base. But this isn't just gonna be some typical clone base. This one is actually based inside a cave. So it's time to start grinding away at all of the rock work. And I got to admit, I am certainly no professional when it comes to rock work. I don't have the most experience or anything, but the only way to get better at it is just to practice. So it's a good thing that this mock has plenty of rock work for me to practice with. I also went ahead and threw in some snot bricks in there just so I can connect some leaves and shrubbery just to make the rock work look a little bit more dynamic. So far, I'm pretty happy with how this rock work is turning out. Probably not the most insane techniques or the best rock work you've ever seen, but I'm pretty proud of what I was able to do. And here's what the 90% finished clone base is looking like. I also added a vine of leaves, which looks pretty cool inside. But here is where the problem lies. The fighter tank just looks too big for that cave. So unfortunately, I'm just gonna have to take it out and use something else. But real quick, we're going to finish off the top of the cave. I just went ahead and put in a bark speeder. I didn't really know what else to throw in there, so I just threw in one of those classic bark speeders from one of the early battle packs. I'm just going to finish plating and tiling off the top. I also built this long-range transmitter, satellite, whatever you want to call it, and it's going to go on top of the clone base. But now it's time to add all of the accessories and the minifigures, so I went ahead and put a gonk droid and a couple supply crates in the back corner. But my favorite part about this mock is the clone troopers that I was able to use, and it is the Keeley Company. I really wish we got to see more of these guys in the Clone Wars, but for the one episode they were in, they are epic. And I've got one of the Keeley boys on top transmitting some messages to the Republic. And here's the finished outpost on Ryloth. Like I said before, building this really makes me want to build a large-scale Ryloth mock, and I'm really happy with how this one turned out. The olive green plants are really the MVP of this mock in my opinion. They add that very nice extra touch of detail. I'm really happy how that long-range transmitter turned out too. For this being the last mock of the challenge, I'm really happy with the final result. First of all, I just want to say thank you very much if you made it this far into the video. If you enjoyed it, make sure to leave a like, consider subscribing to see more mock challenges like this. I had a lot of fun with this challenge, experimenting with different color palettes and different building techniques, and I really like the end result for every mock. Let me know what other mock building challenges you guys would like to see, and yeah, have a great rest of your day.